Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Nonprofit Show. It's January. We're still talking about fundraising trends and just trends across the sector. And we have one of the great minds from our friends over at Bloomerang with us, Melaina Chromy, Senior Brand Manager for Bloomerang. Hey, welcome to the new year and to the Nonprofit Show.
Thank you so much for having me, Julia. Really excited to be here today and to get to talk about fundraising trends.
You know, I think what's really interesting about our conversation, and we were talking about this in the green room, is that these are not the typical trends that everybody else is talking about. And so I'm really excited to dig into this with you because you all are so amazing as an organization about sharing your knowledge, about doing research, getting out there on the front lines, and really helping the sector at large. And so this is going to be fascinating because this isn't just like oh yeah, I think this will be a trend. I mean, these are things that you all have studied and that have recognized. And so I'm really excited to chat with you about this. You know, I'm also very excited every day that we have these amazing partners, and they include our friends over at Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staff and Boutique, JMT Consulting, Fundraisers Friday, our new shows just dedicated to fundraising. I do them with Tony Bell, Mr. Nonprofit. And then Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy, and we have these super cool, wonderful co-hosts that come to us from around the country, and they are amazing as well. But who's really amazing today with us is Melaina Chromy, Senior Manager, Brand Marketing at Bloomerang. Welcome, my friend. We were talking in the green room. It's kind of chilly where you are.
Yes, it is. Thanks for the warm welcome, Julia. I live outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee, so we're dealing with some really cold weather, which we're not really used to here. So I'm definitely bundled up right now. But yeah, I'm excited to dive into our content and talk about trends.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things, the subtext on our trends today is that these are not the trends that you might be thinking of, as I mentioned when we started going. And let's knock off the first one because this is something that everybody's talking about. I don't care what sector you're in, for-profit, nonprofit, government, everybody's talking about AI. But what I'm not hearing about is trust. And then within the nonprofit sector, donor trust. So talk to us about this because this is a fascinating way to think about things.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, we're all hearing about AI right now. It feels like since ChatGPT burst on the scene, there's a new AI tool coming out every other day, a new AI field chatbot, writing tool, documentation tool, whatever it might be. So individuals in both the for-profit and nonprofit sector have immense access to AI tools. And so obviously we've found and discovered that AI usage is prevalent. In fact, over half of all nonprofits in the US use AI technology in their digital communications and their fundraising outreach. This stat comes from a 2024 Twilio study. And what's interesting to me is that this is higher than the for-profit sector.
So, okay, you just blew my mind. Go back and say that number again.
Over half of all nonprofits in the US are using AI to write and inform their digital fundraising.
Holy moly, hair on fire moment for me. Because if you had asked me just to like throw out a number, honest to goodness, I would have been no more than 15 to 20%. I would have been like pushed way down on that. Yeah. This is fascinating.
So, I mean, the usage is prevalent, right? Yeah. And to me, it comes almost as, I mean, the number's large, but it almost comes as no surprise because we know that there are numerous job vacancies in the nonprofit sector. We've talked about this before, Julia. Often fundraisers are having to do more with less. And so I think any tool that can make work easier and faster is a great benefit to fundraisers. But where trust comes in is the donor side of things.
Yeah.
Our good friend and someone we collaborate often with at Bloomerang, Chiri Koshi, did a study last year and discovered that a third of US donors say they would be less likely to donate to a nonprofit if they discovered they were using AI. So we have to talk about this prolific usage, right? And the donor expectations. Donors have a little bit of distrust and a little bit of fear around AI and how it's used.
So let me ask you this, because it seems to me like this is such a new technology, and we're talking about it in the course of social change. There's always a lot of fear. Do you think as we navigate through the year that people will calm down about this, or that trust is still going to be something that we need to be talking about? And hint, hint, we're not talking about it, right?
Right. You just touched on the first point I want to make. To build trust, we have to talk about it. So what we're really encouraging our nonprofit clients to do is to talk about how they use AI, how it's helping them save time and better execute on their mission. So for some of our clients, what this looks like is adding like an AI code of ethics or an AI usage statement to your website. This could be a blog, a statement from your president or your board on how your organization uses AI. This is something that you can link out to when donors have questions. Another thing that we're seeing being done is fundraising professionals including some of the perks of AI in their annual reports. So this could be hours saved, hours saved, time that you get back by using this to help draft communications.
Interesting.
Staffing. So
yeah, and money saved. I mean, when you're talking to donors and you can report on, that you've just been a better steward of your funding, I think that's magical thinking.
Yeah. And I mean, this is the time of year, right? Hopefully a lot of our listeners are, compiling those annual reports, looking for ways to thank donors and report on impact from last year. So I would encourage donors, if you used AI to streamline any communications or workflows, include that in your outreach, include that in your annual report. The more we talk about this, the more we talk about how we use it, the more trust we can build with our donors and hopefully eradicate some of that skepticism or fear about how AI is used.
Wow. Okay. Well, I don't want to say let's just wrap up the show, but I can't imagine it's going to get any better than this, because literally I'm fascinated by this, this aspect. And I'm so appreciative that you helped us to kind of reframe and think about this, because obviously it's not going away, but how we navigate through and forward is just really essential. And I think a lot of us probably watching this or talking about this will have thought about ourselves and our organizations. And to your point, like, what's our impact? But pushing back out and saying, okay, what's the donor impact is a fascinating discussion. And I'm just thrilled that you brought this up. Let's go on to number 2, because I thought this was going to be the hair on fire conversation. But so I don't know, man, it might be even better than number 1. But fundraising trend number 2, the use of influencer marketing. So back the bus up and just start with a quick primer on what influencer marketing is.
Yeah. So influencer marketing is utilizing folks that have a captive audience to expand your reach or awareness of your organization. An influencer can range in definition. That could be a celebrity, right? Like a Brad Pitt, Eva Longoria, or it could be the mayor of your town. Anyone who has a captive audience and could help you get in front of new individuals and audiences. That to me counts as an influencer.
I love that definition. Again, another hair on fire moment, because it's not always the usual suspects, but what it is, it's the following base. It's that database that's attracted to whomever it is you might be able to engage with. Let me ask you a little bit more about this. Is this always paid?
No, it's not. Something I was thinking about before we got on the show today, which I'm sure is on everyone's minds right now, or the minds of most of our listeners, is the wildfires in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Obviously, LA is a big spot for influencers and celebrities, but there's a range of individuals that are fundraising for relief efforts, and they're not all celebrities.
Yeah.
Some of them are people I follow for makeup and hair tips. Others, maybe it's only like 1,000 followers, 5,000 followers. They're not a major celebrity, but they have this network that they can tap into to bring about positive change for a number of organizations. And I think it's a great example of how influencers, whether they're big or small, can help elevate a nonprofit's message and help you raise more.
Right. It's such an interesting thing, because I feel, Melaina, that those in the nonprofit sector that get this are cranked up. They're really doing some cool things, and they're getting the results. And then there's like the other extreme, the folks that don't get it and are doing nothing, right? And just hoping that somebody sees them or mentions them. And so I find this very, very interesting, because it's a cultivation piece, just like you would a relationship with a donor, that as an organization you either get or you don't. And before we move on, my question to you is, when we're thinking about boards, and we have older leadership, older nonprofit leadership, from C-suite to our boards, how are they going to get and actually fund this? Are they going to even understand this concept?
So, right. You mentioned a really good challenge.
Yeah.
Part of this, I think, is, knowing your audience. Who do you have to pitch to get buy-in on this? If it's maybe older board members, you don't have to use the word influencer. You could call it community outreach, community networking. So finding those well-known individuals that can spread the word. Whatever it is, find a way to describe it that'll make sense to your stakeholders and those who need to approve the concept, right? So that's one tip. Another tip, and something I would suggest fundraisers bring to their board or to their stakeholders, is to remind them of the value of word of mouth. In our generational giving report, we discovered the number one way donors learn about an organization is through a peer friend or someone they follow mentioning the organization.
Right.
So the number one way we get discovered and find new donors isn't necessarily through a cold outreach, through mix and mingling at an event. It's our advocates and our supporters talking about us. And so
let's move into that then, because I think this is a thing that we think of peer-to-peer fundraising in one way, but you're really letting us in on a new direction, in a more modern approach. Talk a little bit more about that peer-to-peer fundraising and how it is different through the generations.
Yeah, so very similar to influencer marketing, there is a younger interest in peer-to-peer fundraising. We found that over half of all millennials would fundraise for an organization if asked, and 56% of Gen Z would fundraise on behalf of an organization if asked. So, as our primary donor demographics change, we really think that this is going to become a more significant fundraising vehicle or method.
So are you talking, Melaina, about things like it's my birthday, instead of sending me a gift, donate for the next 24 hours to this group, or join me on this walk run? Or is it like I'm going to put a stake in the ground, and for the rest of my life, I'm going to be supporting this mission? It seems to me like it's maybe more short term, or is that just my own opinion?
It can be both, I think. Peer-to-peer fundraising essentially is anytime an individual raises funds on behalf of an organization. So it could be something like a Facebook fundraiser, donate to X because it's my birthday. It could be something like a Relay for Life. I'm participating in this race, raising funds for this organization. Please support the cause. So anytime an organization gets a group of supporters to fundraise for them.
So it sounds to me like we need to step back and put this on the onus of the nonprofit sector and say, look, what are you offering? Do you have the vehicles so that somebody can do this, right? Because if you don't even have, and I know this happens in the nonprofit sector, it drives me nuts. If you don't even have a button on your homepage, click to donate now, right? I mean, right? We got to kind of like, we need to look internally and say, how would somebody set this up, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's an absolute hurdle. Having a digital way for people to easily give and support you is, paramount. And people can host these campaigns manually, collecting donations in envelopes, giving them to the organization, or you can use a number of platforms and digital tools to make it easy. The biggest key to success here is making it easy for your supporters or your fundraising participants. So we've seen success with nonprofits that create talking points in advance, social media posts and graphics, anything that they would normally create for a fundraising campaign for themselves, they share with their dedicated supporters and sometimes offer some incentives for those individuals to fundraise on their behalf.
Wow, I love having the content pieces such as social media graphics and, of course, easy access. That just seems like a no-brainer investment getting up front so that then everybody understands that this can be readily accessible and it can be meaningful, look professional. And I think also too, Melaina, be more in line and in step with the nonprofit, right? Because sometimes it's telephone tree. We get a little further away from the original organization, and then we can get a little off track as to what our mission is, or some of those nuances of branding.
Yeah, it's a communication exercise and opportunity as well. So, if a new donor comes to an organization through like a word of mouth referral, through a peer-to-peer campaign, let's say, the next step for the organization is definitely to communicate, to follow up and re-inform that donor of their mission and their impact, so that the individual who was brought in because they wanted to do what a friend asked them to now wants to keep giving because they have an affinity for the mission.
Right.
So that's really the next step in the process.
Yeah. I love that you brought that up, because absolutely otherwise it's just such an effort and a magical connection that falls flat.
Yeah.
And then they move on to something else, right?
Yeah. And so, if it's a fundraiser, a relay, a walk, bowl-a-thon, these things can take a lot of forms. I definitely encourage nonprofits, have a landing page or a specific campaign page where you describe what you're raising funds for and what your supporters are raising funds for. That way your message is central, and any donors that are brought in can learn about your organization. We have a client who has experienced immense success with this, called Islamic Relief USA. They have one particular peer-to-peer fundraiser that just blew me away. It was a K through 12 small private school, and the students wanted to raise funds for those impacted few years ago by the earthquakes in Syria. They ended up starting a peer-to-peer campaign. The goal for the school was $4,000, and they ended up eclipsing the goal, raising approximately $50,000. They were featured in local news. And I mean, some of these fundraisers were elementary schoolers, but they were asking their parents, they were asking their parents' friends to give, and family members, and that was effective.
I love it. I think that's a great example. And it just goes back to your, the very first trend that you talked about, and that's donor trust and how you communicate out. I mean, hint, hint, all of these fundraising trends are kind of woven together, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're not necessarily, I mean, they are standalones, but yet so much stronger when you weave them together with the warp and the weft of this. Okay, I got it. Don't have a lot of time left with you, but I got to ask you this question. How long is it going to be before we see these trends taking effect, and how will we know when we're getting there?
Yeah. So this is gradual, right? It's an evolution.
Okay.
I think trust in AI is something that is going to be more prominent this year than when AI first came on the scene. Obviously, the more we use it, both in the nonprofit and for-profit sector, the more our donors are going to expect some sort of statement about its usage.
Okay.
So donor trust has always been something that's important in fundraising. It's just taking new forms, and there's new tactics popping up as we start using these new tools like AI.
Right.
As far as influencer marketing and peer-to-peer fundraising, this is something that, I've mentioned a couple of natural disasters, but this is something that's going to continue as younger generations become primary donors. It will continue to pick up in importance and prominence. So I think something to just be aware of for our fundraisers listening in is the demographics of your donor base. We know that we are on the verge of a very large transfer of wealth in North America from the baby boomer generation to their younger counterparts. So getting ahead of these trends now and beginning to incorporate them in your fundraising strategies really sets you up for success, not just in this year, but in the next 5 to 10 years to come.
Right. I appreciate you saying that, because I agree with you on this. It's like, this is not, sometimes we use the word trend and it seems like it's in and out and it's quick and sexy and then you move on to something else. But this is really more of a pattern. It's not going away, right? I mean, and I think it just makes sense. I loved that you said, it can go from a celebrity, an A-lister celebrity, to the mayor of your town. I thought that was fascinating, because I think a lot of times we see influencer and we think, oh, it has to be an award-winning, actor. It has to be a high-level celebrity. But no, it can be a mom blogger who's got quite a following.
Yeah, exactly. One of the easiest ways to find your local influencers is just to search the name of your city on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook. You can see who's making trending content in your area, and those are great people to inform about your organization, invite for a site visit, and see if they'd be interested sharing about the good work you do. It doesn't have to be a full-blown celebrity endorsement. I know those aren't feasible or realistic for a lot of organizations.
Right. Well, and they can be imperiling as well. I mean, that can be a rocky road, because they could be endorsing something else or going off on a tangent that maybe doesn't align with your mission. And so you have to be thoughtful about this. And I love too that it can bring you maybe a new group of people that are a natural fit, but that you had never as an organization been able to connect with. And so I think it's just a great, great strategy to be really looking at and investing time and resources in. I'm so excited that you brought this up. I really am. I'm fascinated by it. And I would love to, as you all, Bloomerang's so great at doing this research. As we navigate through the year, I'd love to kind of come back and look at the measurement of some of these things to see,
Yeah.
what's going on, and you know, what happened with, you know, ABC organization when they did this. I mean, what was the unexpected result? Very interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just
It's
let us know. We're happy to share any resources or guides to help our fundraising community act on these trends and put resources together to help their advocates or influencers fundraise on their behalf.
Yeah. You know, before we let you go, kind of as a general wrap up, one of the things that strikes me, and I know you come from the PR and communications world.
Yeah.
That's my background too. So we're soul sisters in this. But I'm fascinated by just the foundational nature of communications. It builds trust. It
Yeah.
reaches new people. I mean, it connects people in a meaningful way. I mean, and I don't know, Melaina, it seems like for some reason we've lost that sense of how valuable communications are.
Yeah. Before I started working at Bloomerang, I was actually in fundraising and higher education fundraising.
Oh.
And my work was in annual giving. So it was a lot of writing fundraising appeals. And the common thread that I've seen throughout my career is storytelling. I think a lot of fundraisers are professional storytellers and communicators. And so that skill, whether you are building an advertising campaign or a fundraising campaign, is paramount. We need to tell stories and tell them well to rally support and to inspire action. And, you know, I think in our digital age, people are really looking for those tangible stories of impact to connect to and to just build an emotional affinity or connection to the causes they support. They want to know what's going on behind the scenes. They want to know that there's people whose lives are being impacted or changed at the organizations they support.
Right. Well, it's still the baseline and foundational piece of how we operate a business, for profit or nonprofit. It's just the mode with which we're sharing these communications. You know, the digital nature. But if you step back, it's still the same process. Telling a good story. It's still the same piece of how do we connect and how do we bring people in, you know, to march alongside us. It's fascinating because it seems so complicated. And I think, Melaina, it's complicated to those of us who might be having to use new technologies and mindset. But if you step back and you're like, the bottom line, it's communications.
Yeah.
It makes it a little bit easier to understand.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be, you know, newfangled tools or the latest piece of tech, right? Something that we see a lot of organizations doing is just going live on Facebook or LinkedIn, and they don't have a professional video crew. It's them just filming themselves, telling a story, showing impact. So however you show impact, however you tell a story, getting back into that core element of a story arc, a hero and a challenge will help you acquire new donors and share your mission effectively.
I love it. Well, I always love my time with you, and in all of your experts that come to us from Bloomerang. You always are so open with sharing your knowledge, your wisdom, and your resources and your data. I think it's really important for our sector to understand that, you know, there's a lot of research that goes on, but there's a lot that doesn't get shared unless you're a client. We call it gated. It's gated information. And you all are just doing the opposite. You are out there sharing, building our sector up with a tremendous amount of information. You can go on to bloomerang.com And there's a resource section there that is incredibly vast and will help you to kind of educate yourself, your board, your teams, to maybe help you with this new year and figuring out some new strategies. Melaina Chromy, what a great day for me to have you with us, senior manager, brand marketing at Bloomerang. What a fun conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julia. I really appreciate it.
It's great. You know, we had 2 hair and fire moments today, really probably a third, but I mean 2 that you just like absolutely rocked my world with some of the things that you said. And so this is always a fun day for me when I learn something completely new and different that kind of sets me on end. And so I loved this conversation. You know, we have these amazing conversations every day. We've now done more than 1,200 episodes. We're in past 5 years of broadcasting, and we are here because of these amazing sponsors. Bloomerang, one of our very first sponsors, is with us day in and day out. American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Fundraisers Friday, Your Part-Time Controller, Third Sector Company, and Clear Impact. These are the folks that make a difference with us in our sector day in and day out. Melaina, we end, and you know this, every episode with this mantra, and it means different things. Sometimes it's complex, sometimes it's simple, but it goes like this: to stay well so you can do well. See you again, everyone.